Hey guys, I'm Bella, the Maker Mama boss lady behind Fiber and Fox, and this is Box of Socks 2024. Now you might be thinking to yourself, did I miss something? Did this get pushed back by the algorithm somehow? Did it delay in uploading? No, it is almost the end of March 2025 if you're watching this when I put it up. I know these videos get a lot of views throughout the year, so I don't think it really matters overall, but typically I would film this in January, having finished all the socks from the year prior. I think I've been doing these videos for maybe, it's either the 4th or 5th year. And if you follow my podcast, life has just been lifing lately. I'm Bella, I'm a crochet designer. I also knit, and usually I like to do a roundup at the end of the year of hopefully everything I make, but then also a separate box of socks video of all the socks that I knit, because I know some people are not sock knitters, and I like to give it its own little content section on my channel. I did not get to filming it in January like I wanted to, and I tried to be okay with that. But thinking about it, it was going to drive me crazy if I didn't have the 2024 socks in that lineup of all the years of Box of Socks. So I'm filming it in the end of March. Why not? It's my channel. It doesn't really matter. I had pulled on Instagram. I was like, it's March. Should I still film Box of Socks? Do we all need that content? The options were like, yes, we need that, or no, keep your shameful socks to your shameful self or something. And some of y'all harsh people voted to keep your shameful socks to yourself. I was kidding. But I'm gonna film it anyway, because this is my channel and these are my socks, and I'm gonna talk about them whenever I like. But I do know that these videos are pretty evergreen and that sock knitters reference them all year long. So I'm filming this now. It is March of 2025, and we're gonna talk about all the socks that I knit throughout all of 2024. Kind of a meager pile compared to other years, but I do have some that I want to share. I'm not going to go into super incredible detail in this particular video. If you go back to some of the earlier Box of Socks videos, I talk a lot about supplies and patterns and channels and materials if you are just getting started in sock knitting. I'm going to give you a quick overview of what I use and how I knit my socks, but there is no one way to knit socks. And if you're new to sock knitting, this is, let's see, when did I start knitting socks? Probably 6-7 years ago. So I've been knitting socks for a while, and it's always just a great pick up and go project, something easy to put in a small bag, have on hand. At this point, even if I'm not following a sock pattern, I know how to make socks, and I have a go-to sizing and whatnot that works for me, and it's just a very nice mindless reset in between project where I don't have to do a lot of math or anything. The socks, I think there's a couple that are patterns. If they are patterns, I will link them below. And if there are yarns that I can specifically link, I will link those as well. But most of the socks that I knit in 2024 are on the Scrappy side, and we're just using up stash. And a lot of them were freestyled on the patterns as well. But I will link what I can. And then also, if you are new to sock knitting, I'm going to link down below a whole bunch of resources and channels and people more qualified than I am. I don't have any how to knit sock content. I do have the whole playlist of the Box of Socks, but nothing on how to knit socks. But I will link some very competent and helpful sock knitting experts. So if you want to dive into sock knitting, you can figure out what works for you. What works for me, I'm going to share, but again, this is not like the way you have to knit socks. I am a huge believer, ooh, that's glary, in these Haya Flexi Flyers. They are kind of a hybrid of a double pointed needle, which are the fixed. You usually have like 4 or so of them, depending on the pattern and the age and all of that. Sharp little knitting needles with points on both ends, and you're working around a series of them to make a circular sock. Some people do magic loop, which is working with a regular circular needle that has the long cord and doing this loop thing where you pull it out and working a small circumference on a large circumference loop. I do not like that. I do not like the double pointed needles. And then some people use the small, like 9-inch circular. So they have the same circular cord, but they're just really tiny. So needles and a little cord. These are kind of a hybrid between a regular circular needle and a double pointed needle. And it allows you to work your socks. And I will link a video on how to use these because I know it's kind of hard and I'm not going to go into depth. But you're working your socks, half your stitches on here, half your stitches on here, and you're working around with this as an active needle. So you're knitting across, and these have this bendy little flexi cord in the middle. So instead of a rigid double pointed needle where it's all straight and very pointy and sharp, you only have pointy ends and then a flexi bit in the middle. And I have been using these for at least 4 years now, and this is the only way that I knit socks. I really enjoy them. I have them in multiple sizes. I will link them below. Sometimes it's hard to get certain sizes depending on where you're ordering from, but I will link a couple different options. You can also buy a set where I think it's size either 1 through 3 or 0 through 2, I forget. But you can buy a whole set. I misplaced my size 1s, which are my most used ones. When I was moving, I set them aside somewhere in case I wanted to knit socks, so I would have them and not pack them in a box, and I have no idea where they went. And we moved like 6 months ago. So I need to figure that out so I can knit some size 1 socks. That's kind of my go-to needle size, but I have them in a couple different sizes. I'm not sure what the price is just at this minute, but when I bought them at a local yarn shop, that was the price, which is on the pricier side for a single set of needles. But like I said, this is the only type of needles. I have them in 3 sizes, the only needles that I use to knit socks ever, unless I'm doing something like a chunky worsted weight sock or something, which I don't really do. So for my fingering weight socks, that is what I love. You don't have to love them, but I would recommend trying them. And like I said, I will link some resources below. I will also link some resources if you are a crocheter and would like to try crocheting socks. Not something that I personally love. I am a crocheter. I do love some crochet, design crochet patterns. I like to knit my socks, but I will link some resources and some stuff down below. Other than that, I don't have a ton of things that I would recommend or say that you need for socks. It's again very personal what you like. There's tons of free patterns out there and all sorts of ranges in yarn budget. I'm moving more towards non-superwash wool. I do like a woolly wool at this point in my life, but I use a mix of both. And the only other things that I think I use consistently to knit my socks, I had 1,000 of these at one point. I leave them everywhere like calling cards, so I probably have less than 1,000 now. But these light bulb stitch markers that I bought in a pack of 1,000, and I use these for counting about every 10 rows, or if the pattern specifies something else. So for marking beginning of round, and then I usually do like every 10 rows or so, just so I get consistently sized socks between the 2 sizes, a little light bulb stitch marker, and I like to put them in to match the socks with the color scheme or in rainbow order or something. And then I can make sure my 2 socks always come out the same. And then I also use sock blockers. We'll talk about these in a minute. This isn't necessary. You can definitely wash and dry your socks and lay them flat and they'll be totally fine. But these are nice if you want to podcast or take pictures. I will link something to this degree as well. But those are the only sock tools that I consistently use. I have all sorts of bags. Some are project bags, some are just like tote bags or little purses or little like travel makeup cases that fit a pair of socks in them. So you don't have to get super into the sock stuff. It can be very simple, as much as a set of needles, some yarn, a stitch marker or 2, and you're good. I think that's my whole spiel on what's going to be linked down below. I will also link my Instagram, my shops. I'm a designer of crochet patterns. Like I said, I'm currently wearing my There and Back Again cowl. This is a crochet cowl design with cute buttons and fringe. But other than that, we're talking about knit socks, so let's get going. In 2024, I only knit, technically, 6 pairs of socks, and I think a pair of baby booties, but we're not going to talk about those here. Maybe a couple pairs of baby booties, but we're just talking about socks. Mainly I knit socks for myself. I'm an adult US size 7-ish, but again, I've kind of got a formula that works for me. I'm not going to tell you exact numbers or stitch counts or sizes or gauges or anything. You go figure that out for you. I will tell you mostly what I do. I typically knit a 60 to 64 stitch sock, usually on size 1 needles, usually fingering weight yarn. I did knit a couple pairs of socks, so there's 4 adult size pairs and 2 youth size pairs, I guess. I have a daughter as well, so I need to knit my son some socks. He's all outgrown his, but I knit 2 pairs of socks for my daughter as well. But first up, the first socks that I knit in 2024, which I just held up a second ago with the sock blockers. These are a not matchy, super fun, scrappy pair of socks that I'm calling the Daff Days-ish socks. This is not a pattern. I will put in a picture of my Daff Days cardigan. That is by the Kroy. I made that at the end of I dyed the yarn 2024 in the summer, and then for Advent. I'm getting my years mixed up. Okay, so yes, 2023, summer. Wow, that feels like such a long time ago. I was naturally dyeing with plants from my garden and stuff we'd foraged. a whole rainbow of yarn. And then for Advent, I knit myself the Daff Days cardigan. And these are all colors that I dyed up for that cardigan. And there's no accompanying sock pattern. I do believe that there is a shawl pattern that went with the Daff Days as well. But I kind of just did a similar broken rib style thing and created a sock based on my measurements and what works for me. The background color is Paton's Kroy sock. Paton's Kroy in the color linen, I believe. I do this every time. Is it linen or flax? I'm pretty sure it's linen. It's the gray one. I will link that below because that is one of my favorite go-to sock yarns to have as a background or work with stripes or really just work in anywhere. I use it all of the time. And I would say it was available at JOANN, but rest in peace, JOANN. But a lot of other craft stores also carry Paton's Kroy as well, and it's available on Amazon. So I will link that a couple places for you. So the gray is that, and then the rest is all colors that I had left over from that cardigan that I naturally dyed. And they're fading a little bit, as naturally dyed colors do over time. But all in all, I think these are so fun, and I like that they don't exactly match. They're sisters and not twins. I think the only other yarn that I added in, I often on the heels and cuffs add in another strand of wool. I don't know if you can see. Nope, you can't see my cones. I have cones from Green Mountain Spinnery. They do cheap cones of mill ends, so it's just a single strand of unplied wool, and I just add that in for some extra stability. Another thing that I will do, I think on another pair, I might show later, I have cones, tiny cones. I think they're for a sewing machine initially, that I got at a thrift store of straight nylon. So yarns that might be 100% wool or don't have a nylon kind of content in them. In the toes and the heels, I will often add in a strand of nylon. I have it in a couple different colors. It's kind of stretchy, just for stability, and it creates a fun marling effect. So anyway, these are my Daff Days-ish socks based off the Daff Days cardigan. Makes a really fun outfit when I wear these with the Birkenstocks with the cardigan, because if you're gonna grow your own rainbow and make an outfit, you do it to the hilt. Daff Days-ish socks, pair number 1. I'm filming on a Sunday afternoon, and if you can hear any noises coming from upstairs, it is because I am filming in a basement, and I have a family, and they are upstairs. And it's also windy out, and you may or may not be able to hear my wind chimes. I'm hoping that's in the distance. I turned off the heat this time. Last time we had the furnace noises, but basement filming, it's exciting. Box of socks, pair number 2 of 2024, are these. And the yarns might look slightly familiar because, again, if you're gonna dye your own rainbow, you use all of that. You use all that rainbow. So I had some bits left of the rainbow mini skeins that I had dyed, which is pretty impressive since I had knit a whole cardigan and a pair of socks. This is now the second pair of socks. And I knit up these Scrappy vanilla socks. And when people say vanilla socks, that is not a pattern. That is just, this is how I knit my plain boring socks. There are lots of free patterns on how to knit a vanilla sock and different recipes and how to fit to your foot. This is what works for me. So I can, again, link some resources if you want to learn how to knit a very basic sock. I usually prefer a sock that has some texture to it like this, because I just feel like it grabs onto your foot a little bit better if it has some ribbing or something going on there to kind of suck it all in. But these are just plain stockinette stripey socks, and these are so cute. I really like these. I don't usually do a lot of dark brown. The chocolate brown that's in the background was something that I thrifted. It was a Lion brand sock yarn. I don't think it's still available. If I can find it, I will link it. But it was just a 100-gram ball of Lion brand sock ease, might have been called. If I can find it, I can link it, but it has the old Lion brand label on it, and I've never seen it before, so I think it was older. But it was very comparable to if you worked with West Yorkshire Spinners Signature 4-ply, which is always a mouthful to get out. Very comparable to that, and I like it a lot, again, as a stripey neutral base. And then all the other bits are, again, the naturally dyed, except for the white that I marled in, which is another Green Mountain Spinnery cone. Nothing to really report here other than these ones do actually match and are just colorful and really fun. I think these are my favorite of the year. I really like these ones. Yep, that's all I have to say about that. This video is going to go pretty quick. Vote for your favorite sock below, but this one's my fave. Pair number 3, I'm not even going to bother putting on the blockers because these are, hands down, the most boring socks I've ever knit. Ever. There's a reason that I knit them, and they didn't live up to their full potential just yet. But this is, again, Paton's Kroy. I don't know what the color is, ivory cream something, plain, but you could use any old white wool on this. I knit these because I wanted to do some bundle dyeing, which, again, I was in my naturally dyeing zone over there, and I wanted to try. This is a book that my friend got me on natural dyeing by Rebecca Desnos, but she is just one of many natural dyers on the Great Wide Web. But bundle dyeing is where you take plant stuffs and there's a couple ways to do it, but usually steaming it, you put the plant things in, you roll them up, and then sometimes it's around like a pipe. Sometimes it's just like tied in a little package, tied up with string, like she's doing there. And then you're steaming it, and it's extracting the color out of the dye stuff and printing it onto whatever you're printing on. So that's a simplified version of bundle dyeing, which I've yet to try. I've done a lot of hammer pounding, flower pounding, but I think the bundle dyeing kind of creates this really beautiful natural tie-dye. And I believe you can do it with either fresh or dried flowers. So I have a lot of dried, like marigolds and cosmos and stuff that I was thinking that I would get to eventually, because at the height of garden season, I'm a big veggie gardener. And there's always a lot of canning and stuff that needs to go on, so didn't have a lot of natural dyeing time. I knit these up in like March or something, preparing for the summer, and then never did it. But I have them, and I have a whole bin of natural dye stuff that maybe this year I will get to. But basically you would put your little flower bits, roll them up, steam them up for a set amount of time, unroll them, clean them off, and it would be a fun tie-dye type print, naturally dyed sock. I was originally looking to source, because I follow a lot of people on Instagram that do natural dyeing, and I was looking to source some socks because a lot of people were dyeing on like cotton or wool socks, and I was like, oh, I could order these from this company, and then I was like, I know how to knit socks. Why don't I just knit some white socks? I have plenty of undyed yarn. It probably would help for the clarity of the pattern if it was a tighter machine knit type of fabric, but I think for the bundle dyeing it's kind of smudgedy anyway, so I don't think it's going to super matter that the gauge is, you know, kind of open. Tiny feet are running. So this is a bundle dyeing project that has yet to come to fruition, but these are pair number 3 of my super boring stockinette white wool socks. Pair number 4 I don't have blockers for, because these are for my daughter, and her foot is obviously smaller than mine because she is 6, by not by too much. These, I don't remember what size I do for her. I think I usually do about 56 stitches, and I can get away with 60 or 64 for myself, so not incredibly a lot smaller, but she is very rough on pulling the socks on and off, so I do try to give her a little extra room in there. But this is just another pair of vanilla, being that there's nothing going on in the sock texture or anything, just a plain stockinette sock. And these two do not exactly match, but they are the same yarn. This is Premier. It was a sock yarn by Premier that my mother got at the dollar store. I don't remember what it is. And it's, again, probably discontinued if you got it at the dollar store. But it had just really strange random self-striping color breaks that didn't really make sense. Like, what is this large white section there? I don't know. And then I just marled some other yarns together for the cuffs and toes. And I also held it, again, double, because she is rough on socks with that white from Green Mountain Spinnery. Or was this with nylon? I think this is Green Mountain Spinnery. I held it double with something white. So it's the striping sock yarn held with something white to create this kind of marley fun effect. And she's gotten a lot of wear out of these. I'm not super precious about socks. These are definitely getting worn and used, and she likes to wear her little Birkenstocks in the spring, like I do. Her Birkenstocks. And yeah, she declared last year that she does not like long socks, either knit or store-bought, because it is too hard to figure out if you put your pants on first, if you put the socks on first. It's too lumpy. It all needs to not be like that. So shorty socks. So I started knitting her only shorty socks, unless they're like for snow play and you need some warm woolly ones. But yes, she's requested only shorties. So these are for her, And again, not a lot to report on these, not very exciting, just a pair of shorty socks. I think this is the first pair of shorty socks that I've ever made. But shorties, instead of doing a whole leg, you just do a cuff and then just this little wee bit, or however much you want, whatever height is acceptable to you in your pant legs, of stockinette, and then go straight into the heel. And I think you've noticed by now, if you know about socks, but if not, I am a heel flap and gusset sock person. I have tried other heels. I have done various short row heels and fish lips kiss and all those other ones that come up in the sock world. I like a heel flap and gusset with just a regular old, sometimes we throw an eye of partridge in there, but I really like just a slip stitchy heel flap and gusset. Simple. All the other ones that I've tried, I'm like, you're all right. But I like this. So that is pair number 4. We're almost to the end already, and it's not even a half hour in. This is pair number 5, another pair of shorties that I made for my daughter. And again, I don't have blockers that are her size, so we'll just hold them up. These are a kind of an experimental thing, because on this pair I added in, you can see it's marled again with white, but the white is actually elasticated thread. I bought a whole big spool of it for sewing to do like shirring on like the dresses that have the elastic tight tops where it scrunches all in. A lot of hand motions I'm doing in this podcast. I bought a spool of that to sew sundresses and whatnot, and I thought, well, why not add that to some socks? And the thing about the shorty socks is they kind of want to fall into your shoes sometimes. So I did a nice tight ribbing with a strand of the elastic thread in there, and obviously it's going to create some marling unless you somehow got clear elastic, which would still kind of be visible. I've seen some people after the fact weave in elastic, and maybe they just go through the inside so you can't see it. I don't actually know how that technique works, but I literally just knitted the elastic in like it was a thread. So it's visible, but creates some good bounce back and stretch. This is the only pair I think that I've tried that on, but it seemed to have worked. And then this yarn is some bits that, again, were from a scrap. The striping pattern, all right, so hang on. The yellow, the blue, and this main teal that is striped every other row were dyed by my daughter and I, mostly my daughter. If we do any like Easter egg dyeing or any sort of dyeing with food dye projects, sometimes we're doing some stuff for homeschool or whatever, messing around with food dye. If we have any extra, I always let her throw it on some yarn. It's not like super permanent like an acid dye, but some citric acid in there and all that. It works out good enough for a semi-forever sort of dye, and it's non-toxic. I mean, we're not eating it. I have my own feelings on food dye for eating, but on a sock, it'll work. So you don't need a respirator or anything because you're not dealing with particles. We use Wilton food dye because I have a ton from when I used to do cake decorating, so it's like paste. So some vinegar or some citric acid. It's fun to play around with and not super risky for kids. So she dyed the yellow, the blue, and the teal, and then this striping is actually a self-striping yarn that was by Regia, I believe, and I think it was called Invicta Colors. I got it at a fiber festival, but I have not really seen it anywhere else. So again, don't know if it's discontinued, don't know if it's still available, but it was this whole striping pattern that I then just every other row striped with that main teal color. And with 3 mini skeins and a little bit of scrap, and I still had left over on the mini skeins, but was able to get a kid-sized pair of socks, very cute and kind of personal to her because she dyed the yarn. And they don't match up because that's too much work and they're just fun. So she has a couple pairs of Scrappy shorty socks now, and as I have bits of yarn left over, I can get away with 50 grams for myself if I add in heels, toes, and cuffs. But if I use like 100 gram skein for myself and then have some bits left, I can easily get her some sort of scrappy stripy pair. And yeah, then we have fun matchy socks, but these ones are custom to her. Pair number 5. Pair number 6. This is on another set of sock blockers. I will link the Etsy shop that makes these. They are laser cut. It has a fox all the way down and looks super cool, and you can get like your logo or name put on there, custom designs and whatnot. But the trouble I've had with these, they're gorgeous, and I think they were out of Poland. But the trouble that I've had is just the laser cutting, while beautifully done and sanded and finished and all of that, it just tends to catch, like especially if you've done anything color work or striping inside, it catches on the little sharp bits. So these ones are really pretty to hang up and have in my yarn studio, but they're not the easiest, honestly, to slide socks on and off of to show for the podcast. But again, blockers are not necessary. They're just kind of cute. This is the last pair of socks we have to talk about. This is pair number 6 and the only one that I followed a pattern for in 2024. These are the time traveler socks, which I think might have been in reference to Doctor Who. The original yarn colorway that they were using, I think, was a Doctor Who inspired one. I forget who the designer was, but I will link it for you down below and put it on the screen. It was a free pattern that I had somewhere in my library. And I sort of, mostly kind of followed it. I think there was a specific stripe pattern in the socks. But I was just doing, it's a ribbing, but it's not like a 2x2 or 3x3. It varies all the way around. So like those are thinner than that. It's a ribbing pattern and they fit really nicely. And this one has a Flegel heel. One of them I executed correctly and one of them I did wrong. And I don't remember which one is which. I think that's the wrong one. Maybe not. This one looks neater. One of them I did wrong, but they fit and it's okay. It's another type of heel that this one fits all right, but I'm happy with my heel flap and gusset, so I don't know that I'd insert this again. But this was nice because it allows you to continue a stripe sequence without having to like work all the way around and have the stripe extend that way. So that was a fun option, but again, that works fine. With a heel flap and gusset, you can insert a different color heel, but if you're doing like a short row heel, the color has to carry all the way around and it gets kind of weird. So this, you can see there's a little bit of that and then this goes around, but it allows for a chunk of color. And again, I may have not done it entirely correctly, so don't take my word for it. But Flegel heel, these were my Advent socks for 2024. Every year we like to do, a lot of people do the Advent calendars where they purchase from dyers and whatnot, but my daughter and I like to build my own. So I go through I have like a bin of stash, scrap little balls of sock yarn. I go through and I try to pull colors that sort of work together. I mostly knit in this color scheme anyway for myself, so it's pretty easy to pull out colors, and then I just like separate the ones that are, my daughter's colors out of there. Kind of make a cohesive color scheme of 24 little nuggets. And then I put them in, I've sewn little drawstring bags, and I can possibly link those below as well. I put them in little drawstring bags, and this year I let her pick the order. So she snuck them in the bags, and then I just opened them one every day. And it's usually like 2 to 5 grams of yarn. As you can see, the stripes are different sizes. And the reason I opted for this sock is because it is a toe-up sock pattern. I have never done toe-up socks before, and I think I did all right. I think the sizing came out a little bigger than I would on, you're not gonna really be able to tell because it's on a blocker. Yeah, it looks the same. This looks bigger, honestly. But these are a little larger in the foot, little lengthier than I normally would do. But I was kind of experimenting because I wasn't used to the Flegel heel and I've never done toe up before. But the issue that you run into if you're doing an Advent or something where you're trying to use up all of the yarn, or like a self-striping and you want to use the entire skein, it is very hard to yarn manage so that you make sure you have the appropriate amount to use up and get your right size foot. So this allows you to go however big your foot needs to be, and then your leg can just be however long. It's not a specific length. So it's a great way to use up specific amounts of yarn where you might not want any left over. I'm sorry, I'm stumbling over my words today. So this allowed me to use all the little bits. I did sew in all the ends individually on these stripy scrappy ones, so I did one color every day, and I was marling it again with some Green Mountain Spinnery. This time it was a gray. And this is just all sorts of, not even all from 2024, but all just scrappy bits that I had in stash of various hand-dyed, naturally dyed, commercial, all sorts of sock yarns. And they're really fun, and they kind of read as a matchy pair, but again, do not match. I did the toes and the cuffs the same, right? Yep, the heels are different. And then they're just kind of happy and scrappy. And they're a mix. The gray is 100% wool, and then the yarns are various superwashes, non-superwashes, and it's kind of just a fun adventure in sock yarn. But I really like having the little Advent to open every day, and I call it Scrap Vent, and we usually do a hashtag over on Instagram. Maybe we'll do Scrap Vent 2025. We'll see where life takes me. But under the premise of we have yarn at home. We don't need more yarn. Let's use the yarn we have. And to make socks, you only need some little bits. So these are my Scrap Vent 2025 Time Traveler sort of fit toe up Flegel heel socks. Final pair. So that's my little stack of socks. Other years I've done a pair a month. I think there was a year that I did more than a pair a month. And it just varies by year. I have a whole, I will link something similar because I got mine at Aldi, and you can never find things again after you find them at Aldi. But I have little acrylic, I think they're supposed to be like drawer organizers, maybe for socks, maybe not. But little acrylic bins where I think there's 3 or 4 little squares, and then they click together in rows with rectangles. So I have a whole shelf in my closet of hand knit socks. And then I have a bin where I throw my dirty ones, and then I usually will hand wash them in my bathtub with like a wool wash. Occasionally we run them through the washing machine with a really gentle wash cycle as not to felt or harm them in any way. But socks get pretty gunky. So I wash them separately, and yeah, we have many, many pairs of knitted socks at this point. Is it necessary to knit your own socks? No, it's not, but I like it. And my daughter likes it. My son has some too for the snow, and I need to make him some bigger pairs for the fall. And we're expecting a baby in September, so I need to make some baby socks. Yeah, I haven't made any for my husband yet, but there are plenty of resources out there if you want to make husband-size socks. I just like knitting socks. So I need to get me another pair of size 1 needles and get to the knitting, because again, it's March and I have knit no socks this year. It is atrocious, but the whole first trimester situation was a lot. But thank you. Thank you for coming to my March of 2025 Box of Socks episode. I hope somebody watches this back and is like, oh, I'm so glad she filmed that because I wanted to hear about her socks. And if not, if you're the people that said take your shameful socks and put them in a shameful box, you probably didn't make it this long in the video anyway. If you're here, I appreciate you. Normally we do a crochet and knitting, maybe a pinch of sewing podcast. Sometimes. It was every other week, but now it's when it happens. But I'm glad you are here. You can like and subscribe and follow and whatnot for more content like this. The Box of Socks is a once a year video. I have a whole playlist, but I will throughout my podcast throughout the year talk about socks that I am knitting and whatnot. And then other crochet design content and fiber artsy stuff. So if you like this, stick around. I know a lot of you have found the channel through the Box of Socks videos, so I'm going to keep putting them out, even if they're shameful. Deal with it. I'm glad you were here for it, and I will catch you in the next episode of whatever I may be doing. Thanks, guys.